Okay, so hello everybody. Thanks for coming to my session. I don't know how many of you have already seen the Lucee Undocumented and at dev, Coldbox Developer Week. Some things have changed in there, so hopefully I'm going to tell you some things that are new. I learned something new today as well, having my documentation coming with me. That was actually pretty helpful. And my undocumentation, yes. Yeah. Heavy documentation. So, many people of you know me. I was involved with Misha's, with Rilo and Lucee since day one. With Lucee now, not that deep anymore, but still I'm using Lucee every day, my day in, day out job. Into CFML for 16 years in the meantime. And, well, some C position somewhere in some company, so that's not so important to me. On the other hand, in Vietnam, that is the most crucial thing. If you don't have a C on your business card, you're nobody. But that's really actually not so important. So, Raja itself is a founding member of the Lucee Association, and I work for Raja. And this is kind of my evolution. Yeah, and many people think that I started like this, or I'm still in that position. But I was a big fan of Clipper. Anyone knows Clipper? Okay. D-base compilations. And I remember having my first modem transmitting 1 megabyte of data in 20 minutes. And a big Pascal user in Delphi. I was using Delphi a lot. And then through Java, CFML, and then Lucee. So now it's all Lucee. And of course, you know, if you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So I'm using Lucee with CLI tools from a command box and Lucee itself directly. And if I can't solve it somehow, I'll just ask my undocumentation to help me. So what is this about? When you're writing a product, obviously the most boring thing to do is to document, right? Of course, people sell with a good documentation, but we will never beat Lewis, no matter what we do. So Lewis writes really novels about 1 line of code, and we cannot beat that. So many things have grown over the past. We have had a lot of help from the community, bringing docs.lucee.org into a better shape and having more and more up there. But some things are missing, and I want to show you a couple of things that are missing that are maybe very interesting. They maybe have lost focus over the years, but they're still very, very interesting. And undocumented means actually that it may be not in the documentation, but it is improving and it will come. Some things are maybe not that well known because you maybe have them in the documentation, but you just don't use them because you just don't know them. Never heard of it. It's not maybe in Adobe Fusion, and that's why you never thought of using that. Or simply, it's not documented, which of course in many cases is true, right? So what are we going to look at? We're going to look at the administration of Lucee, some background info on that, some coding gems. I always say that wrong. How do you say gems or gems? Gems. Okay, good. So from jam, right? That's good. Okay, so coding gems, some unknown functionality, some functionality that we have built in just to make it crazy, some Easter egg maybe, I don't know. And tips and tricks. So, Lucee administrators. The configuration XML is the file where Lucee stores all of the configuration that you have for your current web context or for the complete server, right? And these are XML files, and that is the reason why Lucee works even without having the administrators. You don't need them. Everything is stored in these XML files. So you could actually, and this is a true story. At the beginning, Misha and I were arguing, why do we need an administrator? Right? Because you can edit those XML files, right? And obviously, we got the administrator, and now we talked about, well, removing it again, because on live sites, you don't want to have the administrator. So the administrator in Lucee 5 is an extension, which by default is installed, but you could uninstall it, so that's not reachable anymore, right? Good, so let's have a look at these XML files, and normally, if you just install Lucee by default, they are located in the web root under webinf/Lucee. There is a file. Let's have a look. Webinf/Lucee. There is a file called Lucee Web XML. Let's have a look at this one. What you have on top, and this is already pretty interesting, you have some so-called placeholders. These placeholders are giving you a temp or a kind of a variable that you could use in order to get to that directory that is for that specific variable. Because sometimes you have no idea what the temp directory is, or how do I get to my web root? You know, very often you have a CF set, my web root is somewhere. So to show you how you can use this, let's just do some live coding. I'm going to go here to the same, one moment, where is it? Sorry.
I love that you're still using it.
I'm using Total Commander for, I would say 15 years now.
Yeah.
Never changed it. It is coming from a guy from Bern in the city where I was working, so that's just sharing my love to the Swiss people. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a small index CFM, index.cfm. Excuse me, I can change it to English, but
No, that's fine.
it would just say file instead of .i. So okay. So what I can do is cf dump, or we do a cf script, and then you do something like dump expand path of quote curly bracket, and let's take one of these here. Let's take, for instance, the web root directory. Okay, here we go. Now let me execute that devo/index.cfm. Okay, so this gives me, oh, sorry, you can see half of it there, but yeah, well, maybe let's put it this way. Okay, let's make it a little bigger. Okay, so this gives me the directory which is associated with that curly bracket web root directory. And you can use all of them that are in there, and you can even define some of your own, but let's say system directory. Let's take the next one, and we go here. Okay. There you go. So this is C Windows System 32. You can use all those constants that are predefined for every Lucee server. Or if you want to find out where the Lucee configuration is, you can use those constants. And another tip, which maybe lots of you don't know, if you hover over any dump, it will tell you where the dump comes from. I don't know how many of you have already seen a dump somewhere on the site, and you had no idea where it came from. So if we're going through the code, oh, where is it?
It's actually saying to one of the guys on the mailing list, we're looking to help them debug a fuse box application that was transferring over, and the error was popping up from somewhere, and of course there's errors that pop up from anywhere, right? You just hover over it and then...
Yeah, exactly. So it is a feature that you maybe just stumbled across if you're kind of accidentally hovered the mouse over your dump, right? Okay, good. So have a look at these, play around with them, and you can use them with expand path, right? That is the way how you can use them. And you can use them inside the configuration as well. Like, for instance, let's see here, file system. Here you can see the deploy directory here says it goes into Lucee web/cf classes. So if you want to change that CF classes directory to point somewhere else, you just use either this variable here, this Lucee web, or you can use an absolute or relative file, right? Okay. Good. So resetting the Lucee administrator password. This is documented, but lots of people don't know it. If you forget your password, have a look at the header of the Lucee XML files. There are two, server XML and lots of web XML files. And there you have a default password. The default password is something that you define with server administrator, so that when you go to the web administrator, that's the default password. Because sometimes people just created new web context, and then the administrator was asking for a new password to set. So you just break into the administrator. So that's why it's always important. When you're setting up a server with Lucee, go into the server admin and set the default password. And this is the main password that, well, hash of the main password that Lucee is using. and the salt that Lucee uses in order to scramble that. Okay, so, and let me just show you how this looks like in, where is it, Lucee Home. Lucee Home. Lucee, I have Lucee 5 context, and here I have Lucee Server. If I open this, what you see here is default password, and what you of course can say now that my default password and my password are very big security. Yeah. Okay. But anyway, if I forget my password, I actually just delete these attributes here, restart Lucee, and I have an empty password that I can then set a new password. By the way, if you have any questions, just interrupt me at any time. So, using these constants, what we could do is we could actually even change. I hope you can see it. It's a little black. But here it says deploy directory equals ram : // That means what Lucee would do in these with this configuration, it would just compile the CFM files into bytecode and store these bytecode files in RAM. In order to show you how this actually can work, is I'm now actually going here into the webinf Lucee web XML to this file system, and what I'm going to do now is I'm actually using, let me just use a fixed location, d:// or I'm going to use zip : // d:// tmp.zip exclamation mark CF classes. So you can imagine what I'm doing here. Yeah? Anyone?
You're going to compile the bytecode into a zip file.
Whether it makes sense or not, doesn't matter. I could even compile to an FTP server if I would like to. But so let's see whether this is working. The way how I can reload this, the configuration is by either changing something in the administration of Lucee or restarting the server. Since I don't want to restart the server, I just go to the Lucee, Lucee/admin.cfm, Control-0, and let's just do something. I hope this does it already. I guess I need to just set something. One moment. Regional. Okay, update. Good. So let's just execute that one file again. dev.O/index.cfm. CFM. Okay, so let's have a look. Maybe I need to restart Lucee again, but no, here it is. So now I have my temp zip file here, CF classes, and in here I have my index CFM, right? So this shows you that you can use any kind of either these constants, or you can use, for instance, a fixed location like ram : / or even a database if you like, in order to compile these things. So compiling into RAM is giving you a little performance advantage because you don't have to write those files into the storage location, right? But of course, you're consuming RAM. Good. Okay, and as I said here below, you can change it to any resource. Now, regarding the Lucee constants, I won't go into very many details here, but you can define your constant yourself. So you can say log file dir equals there, and then you can use this curly bracket log file dir wherever you want to, right? Okay. Since Lucee is using all these XML files to store the settings, what you can do is you can actually take your local environment that you have and put it into the development environment. Just copy the XML file, and all your settings are maintained. Just that one XML file. Same works with server XML file. You might have to adjust paths or IP addresses if you have server database servers addressed there, but it's possible. So you can just take those, copy them over, and restart Lucee, and you're done. Or reload Lucee, and you're done. Right? Okay. Now, something else regarding Lucee 5 now. Lucee 5 has a directory inside the Lucee server which is called deploy. Let me just show you where that is. That actually is under your Lucee server directory, and there you have a deploy directory, which by default is empty. But what you can do is you can just take a Lucee extension or a Lucee upgrade file, these LCO files you download from the website, deploy them, or just copy them in there, and they will automatically be deployed.
We were trying to look for the next files. Where can you download them from?
Okay, so now one thing that I have to say before, I have a very old version of Lucee 5 here, so maybe not everything's working, but it's working now in the latest final version. So let's go to preview lucee.org/download. Or stable. Okay. So I'm using stable or lucee.org/download. And there what you have is releases beta, snapshots beta. We have released the Lucee 5.1 beta yesterday. So there you have 5.1.0.17 and 0.17. This is containing the 2016, ColdFusion 2016 patches. So if I go to extensions here, I see all these different kind of extensions. And what I could do is, for instance, okay, I need the Amazon S3 extension, which is the latest one, this one here. Just downloading it. Let's see. Okay.
At the moment, there's the administrator. You can, of course, install the extension in the administrator, but there's a limitation that at the moment you can also only install the latest extension.
Okay.
And this way you can install an older extension when you, for example, need an old version of Oracle, the Oracle driver, for example, is that the best way to go.
Okay, so I have my download here now. Oh, Supergirl, great. My son has downloaded the latest Supergirl versions. Yeah. Oh, that's me. Yes. So I have the Lex file here, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy that in there. Normally, Lucee is checking this every minute. Right? Every minute. So the latest after a minute, Lucee will try to deploy this S3 extension and install it. If it fails, you will have here a directory called failed to deploy. And then you need to check the log files, which tells you then why it failed to deploy. Maybe you had some kind of conflict. I have no idea. So it could happen. Happened to me in the past because I went through all the updates of Lucee, starting from 5.0 beta, I don't know, 115 or so. And I might have lots of jar files, which are still in old versions. So
maybe the problem was that some extension needed a specific version from Lucee to work. And
maybe.
That probably didn't make any backward compatibility. That was the reason that problem.
Okay, good. So now you see the file is gone. And what you can do as well is you go into context extensions, and here you have installed extensions. They will have abbreviated names, but I just know that I installed the one here on June 16th, and this is European date format, so don't get confused. 16th of June, and that is the S3 extension that I was installing. And just by dropping that file into that directory, it already installs the extension. So if you want to write an extension, just follow the extension documentation guide that we have on the website, create your extension, and then you can just drop it in this directory. Okay? Good. So you can even use that one to upgrade Lucee. So this is where it's normally located. That's under your Lucee installation, Lucee server, and then your bundles, context, deploy, and others. And the deploy directory.
Can I make a small additional? Okay, you can add 3 things to the deploy folder. That is extensions, Lucee core files, and the third thing is Lucee archives as well. So archives you can build in the administrator for a certain mapping. You can also deploy there.
Okay. See?
You can build the complete application as an archive and deploy on your public server, for example. As if you're putting in that deploy folder.
Okay. Good. So while we're at it, we have moved in the development cycle of Lucee 5. Things have been moved from every web-inf directory, so from all the context directories, into the server directory. Because the problem is that you have very many redundant files. You have these drivers tons of times. And now we have, or the debugging files, the debugging templates that we were using, you had them in all these webinf directories. So you had 10 times these many files. And what we now have done, we have consolidated them in the Lucee server directory. Especially that means that if you're upgrading Lucee, you don't have to rewrite so many new files, which are actually automatically deployed as soon as you upgrade Lucee. Right? So these files are all located in Lucee server context admin. Let's have a look. Where is it? Here we go. There we are. So we go to context admin. We have the DB drivers, SQL Server, JTDS, G drivers, that's the gateway drivers, cache drivers, debugging templates. These debugging templates you can edit yourself, add your own debugging templates, and you can use them. Okay. Hang on, where am I? Yeah. Good. So, compile mappings. You know, how many of you are doing every now and then conversions from ACF to Lucee? So many of you, right? And how do you approach this? You know, normally what you do is you take that application, put it on the server, and try your luck, right? But there's a good way how you can do this if you're going from ACF to Lucee. You actually create a mapping called, for instance, / and point it to your code. And then you try to compile that mapping. And compiling that mapping means that Lucee will recursively go through the complete mapping that you pointed to and compile every single file. So if there is a file that cannot be compiled for whatever syntax error or for whatever CF SharePoint or CF client or whatever is in there, it will complain and throw an error. If you like, I can show you. Should I? Okay, good. So let's just go to this directory here. And I'm now creating a file called failure CFM. And this file, failure CFM, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do something like cfset a.b equals 5. This works in Cold Fusion, but not in Lucee, right? Good. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my administrator, go to mappings, create a mapping called /d, which doesn't matter, which points to /. You don't have to put the absolute path in there. The relative path works very well. So remember, if you're copying the XML file, use relative paths. Because otherwise, you're kind of mixing your local environment with the dev environment. In Lucee, you can always use relative paths. You don't have to use C:, whatever. Right? So this is all I've done. Just a mapping which points to my web root. Right? Here's my mapping. Let me just edit it. And in here, what you have is compile all CFM and CFC files inside the mapping. Sets whether the compile process should be aborted on errors. No, I don't want that. So I hit compile. And now Lucee goes in the background and compiles all my files. And there are many files in the webinf directory, so that's why it takes a little longer. And it shouldn't take that long, actually. I wonder why it's taking that long, because normally in my webinf directory there are many files and classes and what have you, but normally this is done in a couple of seconds. Then let's do it differently. I'm going to create a directory here called temp and copy that file in there, and then my resource is pointing to /tmp. So that means we only have one file. Right, good, and now I just hit compile, and here you go. This is what you normally get. You get a list of lots of errors where it tells you invalid identifier error during the file, blah, blah, blah. Colon 1 means in line 1, right? And imagine if you have many files, you will see a list of errors. So you can just go through them, correct them, and then you know that you don't have compilation errors in your code, which you took over from ACF. Of course, you can have runtime errors, right? Those you have to test, because obviously we cannot check on runtime errors just by looking at the code, or by Lucee cannot do that. So this is important to know. Okay? That helped? Good. Good, so let's get rid of this. Good. Okay. Good, debugging. What I tend to do is I use my own debugging template, because debugging templates are, if you're using the ACF compatible debugging template that is shipping with Lucee, you have one which looks exactly like the one, or should be looking exactly like the one in ColdFusion. That one displays, for instance, all the errors that I have, or all the SQL statements that I have, one below the other. I have an endless list of SQL statements, which I really can't do a lot with. So let me just give you one example that I have from a different application. This application is actually one of our clients' application, and it's in German, so it won't help you anyway, right? So, okay, and what I have here is I'm using a template which I wrote, which is called Modern and with my name. And what I do is I have lots of collapsing things that I see here. And what you see, for instance, here is that you have, you can span every of these individual queries. They're organized by tables, so you can actually look a bit better how they're looking like. And then you have the usage and percentage, because Lucee records how many of your columns are you actually using. Because if you're using a select star, and you don't use one column, then you see something like 0 or 50 or whatever. So you know that you have important improvements that you can do in your code, right? Helpful? Yeah. Good. Okay. And here I see them ordered by time. I have an additional, a later version of this one, which is actually limiting the debugging output. So for instance, I would say, let's take this file here, doesn't matter which one it is. And I can say then, please limit all my debugging information that I get just from this file and everything it includes. Because very often, just imagine if you're using ColdBox. ColdBox has tons and tons of calls that you do to the core API, to the core of ColdBox. And that, of course, gives you an endless list of calls. But you just want to debug one single file. And you can just click on that, and then you just see everything that's happening in that. But unfortunately, I don't have it here, but I need to look it up. I got it, so I can give it to you. Okay. I can send it out, so just come to me and I'll show it to you. So anyone who's interested, just come and see me. Good. Yes, and what we have is, if you now go to the Lucee administrator and you go to the debugging section, first of all, you have your settings. This is a different environment, so that's why I'm actually not displaying yet anything. But what you have, first of all, if you want to log the database activity, the query usage will tell you how many percentage of your queries are actually used, exceptions and everything. But this thing here, implicit access, is very, very useful, especially for developing. So for instance, well, first of all, if you say, no, I don't want to have anything shown on the website, debugging is still captured. Because you see here the debugging logs. And the debugging logs will, let me just execute this. Oh, first of all, I have to turn it on. Oh, that's it. Yeah, sorry. First of all, I have to turn debugging on. But just by turning debugging on, nothing really happens yet, just for you to see on the on your sites. But Lucee will capture everything in the background. So I just hit update, go to my index CFM, just execute that a few times, and then I can go to logs here in the admin. And here you see my index CFMs, and if I click on them, I can get the debugging information. Right? This is just a template that we are using. You can expand those and have a look at everything that's in there. But your website itself is not having anything. No output. Right? This is very useful because you don't want to debug your live site and see everything, kill all your AJAX requests and everything, but you still want that information. So what you can do is you can just turn it on and have a look at it in the administrator. Okay, good. But what I want to show you is, first of all, I'm going to define a template now. I'm using my template here. Just call it test. And if I hit create, I can of course say what IP range is it for and what do I want to have logged. Do I want to have highlights in there? Do I want to have call stacks? I'll show it to you in a second. Okay, and now if I refresh this one here, you see my debugging template. And here I have the execution time. And what I do is actually, this is still a bug in this version, but in the meantime it's fixed. What I do actually, I take the absolute path and use the function contract path to get the relative path of the template. Because they always have the same start. You have /var // whatever all the time, which is actually consuming a lot of space. And so that's why I'm creating them into relative paths, right? And but now what I want to show you is if I look at that file, where is it? Index.cfm. Let me just do something stupid here, like for instance cfset url.suzy equals 5, cfdump eval equals Suzy, right? This works. Why? Sorry? Exactly. Which is? Ah, okay. Thank you. So this is working. And my dump locally is a little crazy because I'm working on that one at the moment. But what you see here is I have an implicit variable access. Right? It tells me that in line 62, I have the var Suzy with count 1, which is actually accessed from the URL scope, which is the first one here. It says here, the URL scope. In that file, in the dump CFC, I'm actually using it as unscoped. So actually, I shouldn't use it with dump. I use it with cfset b equals Suzy, like this. Now it's a little better to see. See here? Because eval is actually evaluating inside the dump, so that's where this implicit access happens, so that's why it happens in the dump. In this case, you see here in index.cfm line 2, var Suzy is 1 times implicitly accessed, so that it's actually jumping through hoops to get this variable, right? And if you turn that on for your application, be aware that it will be slowing down the application by about 30%, because it does a lot of introspection. But once you have done that, your application will not only be secure, more secure, it will be faster as well, because it just doesn't have to go through. Yes?
Just wondering, is there a way that we can tap that with this spot? So when we run out chase, we can actually chase to see how.
Sorry, can you speak up a little bit?
I said, is there a way that we can tap into this? You know, say using chase spots, you run your chase, and at the end of your chase, check and see how many.
Sure, you can do that by using cf setting, cf admin action equals get debug data, return variable equals test, cfdump eval equals test. Let's see whether that works. There you go. And here is implicit access. You get a query where you have all that information. So the cf admin gets debug data, actually get debug data, gives you everything. It really gives you tons and tons of information. It gives you even information about, no, hang on, that's another one which I'm coming to later. But you see implicit access, page parts, pages, queries, timers, exceptions, everything. Awesome. Right? Okay. Good. So be careful, consumes about 30% of the cases, but it is 100% accurate. So the varscope checker that you can use is 95% accurate, I would say, because I've used it myself and I was disappointed by it. Well, I was not disappointed. I was 95% happy with it. But the 5%, of course, are always, oh God, that's where I missed it. And okay, now this is something that we have introduced.
Maybe I can ask say something? Yeah. What is something people miss often is that, for example, when you do use CF query and you don't define the variable as local in a function, then the CF query variable is written to the variable scope, and that is something the bar checker doesn't check.
Yeah, that's one thing, or CF-HTTP, or CF-catch. There are tons of things, tons of examples where you actually just forget to localize your variable. Yeah, localize by putting it into the local scope. And this is checking it 100% accurate, because as soon as Lucee goes one step further to find a variable, that's where it ends up here. Okay? Good. Now, this is something that we have introduced lately for one of our clients. The client has been attacked and malicious code has been uploaded to the server, right? And that code has been executed. So the problem was how to prevent that. Sometimes you can't prevent that because this attacker has somehow found a way to penetrate your server. And what we've introduced is a Lucee quarantine mode. And this quarantine mode is allowing you to let Lucee run in a read-only way. That means Lucee will not compile any CFM files anymore. It will just take the bytecode that you have and execute it. So you no more editing on the live server. Yes, there you go. Because that is what people do very often. They just go, oh, let me just quickly fix it. You quickly fix it, and you quickly broke 100 other things. How many of you had that experience? I did.
Never. No, it doesn't ever happen.
No, it doesn't happen. Good. And we have improved that even, that we have written a deploy tool. And this deploy tool encrypts your bytecode with a private key, and your live code runs with a public key to decrypt that bytecode. So you're not even able to upload a bytecode as an attacker to make your code really completely secure, right? You have to jump through that loop that you don't edit anything anymore on the live server. So you're not pushing CFM files to the live server, you're pushing bytecode to the live server, right? Or to jar files or WAR files or whatever it is. And you can even encrypt them and make them 100% secure. If you want to have any information about this, come and see me later.
Can I add something?
You can.
But there is also important that you also protect the code executed from your own developers. If you have a bigger company and you have a lot of developers, maybe you don't trust all your developers 100%, especially when you fire them. And because of that, the average developer not even have access in that case on the encryption process that can be part of Jenkins or Travis that is happening there.
So you can exclude the developers completely from this deployment mechanism, which is kind of helpful. Normally you trust all your developers, right? But sometimes you don't, right? You don't. Okay, good. And that's why you keep your live server secure, because in 80% of the cases the attacks happen from the inside, right? Okay, I won't go into very many details here because I already have 40 minutes and I have so many things that I want to show you more. So, coding gems. Have you ever seen this? CF application action update. That is actually a pretty good feature. How many of you are setting in the application CFC the name, the data sources, etc.? Yeah? Okay. Have you ever wanted to have an additional data source in your application defined? Maybe loaded from the database, maybe added a mapping at runtime, just after the request has maybe passed through, and you just not happen to be in the application CFC. Well, CF application action update allows you to do that. It takes the current application still or the application and maybe adds a mapping, or maybe adds a custom tag arrangement, or maybe adds a data source definition without destroying anything else. Because if you're using CF application, normally, you just reinitialize that one with all the settings that you have in there, right? So we use it a lot because we sometimes have the configuration stored in a separate file or in the database. So first of all, we read the information from the database, and then we use CF application action update to set all those things in the application scope. I can show you that, but again, it takes a little while. Good. I don't know if I can make this a little bigger. Okay, hope you can see it. Just a couple of tricks. This is, for instance, only working in Lucee. You take a literal 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, in this case, it doesn't make really sense. But if you have Susie, comma, Peter, comma, Patrick, comma, Michael, comma, Gert, and you want to create an array out of that, I really hate when you quote this, quote that. And that's why I sometimes use a literal dot list to array and create an array out of that. It's just a shorthand notation. And then, of course, you can do chaining of the member functions. I guess I told you the story about the member functions, right? Yeah. Last year, Misha and I were discussing how do you call these things that we're now using those functions instead of writing a list of append, you write a list of append, or array append, you write array.append. And Misha came up with the idea to call them member functions. I said, nah, no, actually they're type methods or something like that. So we said, okay, well, let's revisit that once we have released them. And then we said, okay, good. So let's leave it like that. And then Adobe released the same things. And guess what? They call them member functions. There goes the rename. So now they call member functions, which is fine. So one other thing that I wanted to show you, if you're using, for instance, closures with each functions, right? For each functions, you have here the function state, for instance, just makes this closure here take a little longer to execute, right? So let's assume we have now, let me just take this code, and hopefully I can copy it from here. Let me just execute that in my code here. Okay. And let me just take this away. Okay, so if I have that should take 10 seconds. But let's maybe do this like this, and let me just execute that. Index CFM F5. Okay, here I have 1 second it now takes because I have a state of 100 milliseconds in here, right? If I make this 10 seconds, then it goes like this. Okay, I have 1 and then 2 after a second, second. I just want to make kind of a closure that takes a little longer. Just to show you, let's for instance use you go to the cloud base, and you go to the cloud base, or you do a CFHTTP or something like that. What you can do now, you can tell this closure to execute that in parallel by doing true here, true here as the second argument, and then you can say how many threads do you want to open at the same time. Let's say 2. Now, theoretically, it should be done in 5 seconds. Let's have a look. Obviously, now the things are coming back completely different. 1 second. Here you go, 5 seconds. Right? I could say do it in 10 threads. There you go, 1 second. Like it?
Yeah. That's very cool. You showed that.
Still, it's cool, isn't it?
Still, it's just as cool as it was the day you showed.
Okay, good. So, how about loops? Oh, I forgot to take this out here. This is actually misinformation on my side. I thought that key and value were aliases for index and item, but they're not. I dreamt about that, so I thought I'd introduce it there. So you can use index and item since version 4. That's working. You can do looping over dates, like for instance, loop from 1st of January till 31st of January, and you get date by date there. I can show you that in, of course, as well. What I like, hang on, let me just go present. Oh, actually, sorry about this. I just created, I actually went the wrong way. Here we go. Good. Let's have a look. Here we were. Yes. Okay. So, but that I can still show you if I go here and do a CF script. This is something that I wanted. I have to admit I wanted this. You can do loop times equals 10. Not here, obviously. Not here. over here, right? Loops times 10. I don't need the information, I don't need the variable, I don't need nothing. I just want it to loop 10 times. Right? For instance, I want to check 10 times whether something is happening. If it happens, just wait out. Right? This is just running fast because you don't have to do any internal things in there. Right? And I don't want to do from 1, 2, 10 equals blah, blah, blah. Just loop times 10. Okay, good. Cached functions. I guess I told you guys about cached functions already. That's a feature that came with Lucee 4 or 5 or Rilo 4. You can just add a cached within to a function. If you have a deterministic function, it makes a lot of sense to use a cached within so that the result comes instantly. Want to see it? Yes, you want to see it? Okay. Good. It's your time that's passing because I have tons of more things. Okay, so what I'm going to do is function square and then required numeric itemp. Okay, return itemp times itemp. Okay, very simple function, and I just do, in order to make it last a little longer, a good example for such a function would be calculating the computer setup from a HTTP, what is it called, the string that you get from
User agent.
User agent. Yeah, from the user agent, kind of calculating how is the computer looking like. Is it an iPhone, is it a tablet, or whatever. That is a lot of regular expression stuff that you have to do there. And we tested that with a long list of user agents, and we ended up with having about 8,000 different ones, right? But if you have log files which contain millions and millions of these user agents, you don't want to do that all the time again, right? So that's a perfect example for a deterministic function which you could cache. So what I'm doing here is I'm just doing sleep 1,000, which is a second. And in here I'm just calling dump square of 10, right? Okay, that should work already. Should give me after a second, where is it? 100. Here we go. Yeah? Okay. Now, what I can do here is I could do, I guess that goes here, cached within equals. Now, what do I put in there? You can do a create time span and everything. Who knows what is behind create time span? If you do a create time span 1000, what is actually behind that? What is that? Is it a date? Is it a number? What is it? What?
Number.
It's a number. What kind of number? In days. So what I normally do is I do 0.01 instead of create time span. I'm just too lazy to type. I know this is 15 minutes, right? So it's a hundredths of a day. If you have 1440, yes, I know that was Facebook. I know. If I have 1440 minutes in a day, a hundredths of that, it's 14.4 minutes. Okay, now if I refresh this, the first one will execute that and store it in the cache. Now it took me, you see, now the second request is only 1 millisecond. Because it's already taken the result that is stored and gives it to you, because you assume it is deterministic. Of course, if you do things in there that are kind of depending on what you're getting inside, then you might cache the wrong thing. So you need to be clear of what you're caching and whatnot, right? Okay?
Yeah.
Good. Won't go into details there. Good, so maybe you have never heard of the query slice function. Query slice function is one of my favorite functions. Takes a query and cuts out 10 records out of it and gives you a new query with those 10 records. You can say query slice, original query, comma, start position, comma, number of records, just like the mid functions from a string. And I use that very often to just cut out one single record or 10 records and have a subset of that query. I hate query of queries. So whenever I can prevent it, I use something else. Yeah, well, it's a substitution for that, but it's very easy to kind of get a subset of your data and use it differently. Query sort, for instance, allows you to sort your query with a function and not using query of query. You can just do query sort, query, comma, column name, comma, type, right?
and I had something with Code Fusion 2016 or 12 or whatever, and also the query sort function. We also, of course, they did the different arguments for that, but we also adapted their implementation.
So Lucee 5.1 is actually containing the adaptation to CF12, but query sort is, I guess, there for since Rilo version 3 or so. Okay, while we are at queries, let me show you something which I'm sure will maybe even make you applaud. So let's first of all see if we have something in the administrator. Let's say database, data sources. Yes, I have test, but test is, well, we'll see. So we do something like qtemp equals query execute of SQL colon select top 10 from menu. I hope that is the database that I'm talking about here. Dump qtemp. Let's have a look. Data. Oh yeah, okay. I need to have the data. Why do I need to have the data? Ah yeah, okay, because that's not defined by default. Comma options quote data source equals test. Let's see. What is wrong? Oh yeah, I'm using star. Sorry. Okay, here we go. I have 10 records, right? Now, return type equals, what could I put in there? Hey. Okay, struct. What is it? Column. What was it? Column key, I guess. Column key equals menu ID. I asked you this the same time again. Very often, what I do is I load some query into a struct so that I can easily address it with the primary key. Yeah. You know, I just have some lookup tables that I need to do here. I could just do this return type equals struct, and it is a lot faster than doing that all yourself. Yeah. This happens on top of it or in the background. Just filling it into the right direction. It's even faster than queries.
What else can I put in that return type?
So far, these two, right? But what you could do, of course, is something like here, serialize. So if you need JSON, okay, maybe that's something that we can add there. But hopefully, Cold Fusion will pick this up too, so that we're compatible there. But I'm sure it's going to be called something else,
Of course,
as usual. Yeah, but I use this a lot because I tend to have my small tables that are lookup tables in structs that I can easily just access them, and this is perfect for that. Okay, good. If you want to have the documentation information, you just get function list, get function data. It gives you all the information about the tags and functions that you have, even the ones that you have created yourself. So if you have created internal tags and internal functions by just creating them in a certain directory, they will be actually listed here as well. One of my favorites, really, is this here, internal request. How many of you are doing CF-HTTP on your own server sometime? Okay, good. I do that as well very often. Problem is there that doing a CF-HTTP actually initiates a request, which leaves the server, goes back through the web server, application server, blah, 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 and ends up in the same spot where it just been. So let's have a look at what we have built there. We have a function called here, or a file called internal request. And what I'm doing here in this, I have a loop times 10, because I was just want to test it 10 times. When I use request is an internal request. Template is the URL that I'm using. Then method post, I can pass headers, I can pass form, I can pass URL, I can pass cookie, I can pass whatever I want, what I can do with CFHTTP. And I don't have to do it with CFHTTP param, it's just this, a method of that function, right? And then I'm just dumping the request so that I can show you what it returns. And then I do the same thing with the HTTP. HTTP, URL, URI, method post, HTTP param, etc.
The label's the same.
Sorry?
Time the label internal request is both the second will be external.
Actually, yes. Oh, come on. Doesn't matter. You're right. That is timer is just giving you the execution time. Yes, so via CFHTTP. Okay, better? Good. And good. Now, if I execute this one, devo internal request. So let's execute that one. So here you see the difference. 9 milliseconds, or here we have more because I'm dumping stuff as far as I know. Yeah, I have the debugging set up. Debugging, let me just turn off debugging. No. Update. Okay, let's go in here. Where is it here? And just refresh that. And if I do that again, so here you go. You have 5 milliseconds versus 500. Okay? Thank you. Okay. So this is something that we're using very often lately. It is not yet properly documented, but it will follow. Right? I use this function a lot. Is that how many of you are doing len string or len trim?
Yeah.
Right? Or you do equals 0. Or you do query record count equals 0.
Yeah.
Or you do something else. This is a replacement for all of that. It gives you true if there are no records in the query. It gives you true when the struct is empty, when the array is empty, when the string is empty, when a number is 0. Right?
Real quick, when a string is empty, is trimmed as well empty? Or
No. Then contract path is the opposite of expand path. So if it can convert it into a mapping, then contract path will do that. Right? An HTML parse is a very nice way to take an HTML and create a nice XML document out of it, or an XML structure out of it. Okay, so then we have the CF retry tag, which allows you to, if something has failed, you can actually use a CF retry to try it again. Mostly when you try to copy a file into a different place and that directory is not existing, you can just create that directory and do a retry. It turns out. This we just discussed before. Yes?
On the is empty function,
Yeah.
for true number 0, our string is empty. But Lucee is still a target language, so the computer has a safe problem.
Yes, I know what you mean. Because 0 could be actually a string which is not empty, right? But actually it's there, it's more logic, I would say. Because you of course can assume that everything is a string. But in fact, in the background, it's not. If you have a date, you're not working with strings that are actually just dates marked as string. It is a date in the background. Even Confusion sometimes does that. But sometimes if you have in Confusion 2 dates, they try, or 2 strings, first of all, and compare them. Confusion, first of all, tries to convert them into dates and see whether they kind of contain the same thing. I agree that is kind of arguable, but in this case, I would say logic versus.
I think it's good, I would say, I would trust it. Not for testing strings or.
Okay, well, yes, I can understand your point of view. Right? So if you're coming, for instance, in a database field, there is a 0 there, but it's actually not empty. You wanted to see whether it's empty. Well, then you use len trim, okay? Okay, good. This is something that we just have discussed before downstairs. That is kind of coming in Lucee 5.2. You can wrap a piece of code into a CF timeout, and you expect that this piece of code will be done in 10 seconds. If it's not, throw an error. Right? Because very often, and the discussion why we're actually having say it yes, we're going to do it right away, is because is this 10-second extending the setting that you have in the CF request timeout or not? Right? By default, it shouldn't, in my opinion, but there are arguments for and against it.
Where you can sort of give a block of code its own timeout regardless, because you know that might take a while.
Yeah, it's arguable. It's arguable. So we're still in discussions on how we're going to do it, but we're still in discussions on how. You can use just CF setting and just raise it by that if you know that you're using this. So that's the counter argument there. But I like this a lot because sometimes you have code that has no timeout as attribute. You have it with CFHTP, with queries, with others, but not everywhere. Right? So I still have, I have done 70% of my presentation, but I actually run out of time. If you have any questions, see me downstairs at the Lucee booth. I don't want to keep you off from going to lunch, because that is obviously awful. Awful of me. So thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed it. I'm here to answer questions, so whoever wants to stay here, I'm going to say, if you want to go to lunch, I'm not taking it the wrong way. Yes? Yes, it's on slides.com/. I'll post it. Actually, you can see it here. It's slides.com, Lucee Undocumented. If you look in Google, Lucee Undocumented, you'll find it. It's indexed already. Yeah, we're gonna. So actually, I should be continuing, right? Yeah, but anyway, if any more questions so far? Well, if you want to stay, I can continue. But whoever wants to go for lunch, I'm not. Okay.
Yeah, you can just keep going.
Keep going. Okay, I'm keeping going. Okay, so for instance, you can use larger and smaller sign in CF script, right? So you can write A greater B GT, and you can use greater as well, right? And you can use all other Boolean operators as well. And what you have in Lucee is if you use triple equals, it will check whether it is the same instance of an object. So you have A equals object and B equals A. And if you test later on A equals B, it will give you true if they're pointing to the same CFC, for instance. So it's the same query or same instance, right? Good. Let's skip this. As I told you before, all paths in Lucee can be relative. So it doesn't matter if you're using CF file action copy, if you're using mappings, if you're using directory exists, or whatever you want. It's always relative is good enough. I said that before with the cached within. What you have now, this is something Lucee 5 has introduced. You can use cached within request. Very often I used actually a second or two, assuming that the request will take 2 seconds. Because I wanted this query to be cached for 2 seconds, as long as the request is running. Right? But now you can use the word request, and as long as your request is running, this query will be cached.
Can you use that for functions as well?
Yes, sir. The request can be used for functions as well, right? The cache within
Yes, the demise function.
Yeah. I'm not being so sure because you confirm. I have documentation confirmed.
It's even that Lucee even has an interface to extend cache within, so you can even write your own implementation for cache within, cache out whatever rule you like.
Okay, I don't know whether you knew that in Lucee you can extend Lucee with your own tags and functions. Who does know that, or who didn't know that? Who didn't know that? Okay, I can show you just a quick thing. If you go to the Lucee server directory, I won't write one myself now, but if you go to the Lucee server directory, inside the context you will find a library directory. Hang on. Okay, just to make it a little like this. You can find a library directory, and in there you have, for instance, function and tag. So, and in there, all the tags that we have written in CFML, like the CF tag, for instance, unlocated. And if you write your own CFC like that, just take them as a template where you can see how it's done, and you can write your own. As soon as you place them in there, your complete server will know this new tag. Or functions, like for instance the dump function itself is a CFM that you place in here. And all it contains is actually a function called dump with all the attributes, and then it calls the CFDump tag, right? So it's not really very sophisticated. The only downside of it is you have to name the CFM and the function in the same way, right? Okay, but you can write your own functions, and that means as soon as you restart Lucee, you will have this function as an internal function, even documented. So, for instance, if you have a look here at the dump function, it has here things like name, var, format, etc. And if I have a look at the internal documentation of my current installed server, I can do it like this. dev.O/Lucee/doc.cfm. This gives me the documentation which Lucee creates itself on the fly of my currently installed Lucee version. And now I can go to functions, and here I should have somewhere, I mean this is not really very nice and we're rewriting this, but here I could go to dump, and here you see all the documentation that I have in here comes from that file. So if you write your specific functions for your company, install in that directory with the documentation, and it will be automatically picked up by the function get tag list or get tag data or get function list or get function data. Yeah?
I think I did one a while back when I was learning the legacy of that.
Yeah.
If I didn't define every single piece of like every attribute in an era, it's like if I had metadata that I wanted to pass in, it would blow it up. Is that still the case?
No, it shouldn't. No, it shouldn't actually, because all of them are optional. And if they do, that's how we'll fix it.
Yeah, but I think it was like the CK editor sort of fixed from the old.
Okay.
So it would pass in the area attributes and stuff, but it would catch it.
Okay, well, it shouldn't, because I've done many of these things and I'm not aware that there are still those things, right? Okay. Okay, so all these things here are automatically generated. I could actually now change something in that file, restart Lucee, and I would see it here reflected. Because this documentation, if you go to /Lucee/doc.cfm, you will see the documentation of your current Lucee version. Right? The online one is mostly the latest version of Lucee, but if you have an old version of Lucee, and this works in the same way for Rilo, for old Rilo installations. Okay, so, and what you have two different directories where you can put them. You can put them either in the Lucee server directory under library tag or library function. Then the complete server will have that function, and the complete server will have that tag. Or if you put it into the web directory in your local context, then only that local context will have that function or that tag. That allows you to limit the functionality to a certain context, right? And that means, for instance, if you're hosting Lucee, you can allow your users to kind of have their own tags and functions within their context that they're kind of the master of. Right? Okay. I guess, Mark, you have done lots of them as well, right? Your own tags and functions. This one I like a lot. See, admin action surveillance. Admin action surveillance gives you the list of all the running threads on your server right now, all the Lucee threads. And it gives you tons and tons of information. You see all the variables in there, all the CGI scope, request scope, a lot more debugging information, everything. So it's just called CF-admin action surveillance, and I guess you need to pass in the administrator password as well. If you like, we can just have a look at this.
Oh, yeah.
Yes? Okay. Good, so let me just close lots of things here. Let's take this one here and make CF-set or CF-script loop from =1 to doesn't matter. Actually, I can use it in since Lucee 5. I can use them without the quotes. Index =I, And now I just do a sleep of 100. This is actually going to just have a request that is running, doing nothing. And the only thing that I'm doing here on top is setting request timeout equals up. I just need to get used to that. I always used to quote everything, but I don't need to, right? Okay, so this is doing nothing. Now, I'll just create another one here called shifter for serve.cfm. And serve.cfm is going to do something like cfadmin. Cfadmin action equals surveillance return variable equals Susie, and I guess I need to pass the password. We'll see it in a second. Cfdump eval equals Susie. So first of all, we're going to let the failure run dev.O/failure.cfm. This is just going to run, and now I'm just calling dev.O/serve.cfm. Read access protected, so it tells me I need the password for that, right? And I need, what you can do here is you can do type web. Type web means just this current context, and you get the request from all the current context. Or if you do type server, then you get the requests on all of the contexts, right? Password equals in here. The only thing is you need to put it in clear text. And nowhere is I changed it before so that it doesn't really matter. Oh, I'm so smart, thank you. This is recorded, right? Okay, so what you see here is that there are two requests running. You have the ID here. Let me just make that a little bigger. You have IDs in here. This ID you can use in order to abort that request.
That first one, this request.
I suppose so. I have no idea, but we'll see it because you have the information. So what you see here is this is my application name. Here is my CGI scope, and here you can see this is the actual request. I have no idea what the first one is, but maybe that's even a bug. And in actually that is serve. Let me just see. I wonder why there are three things here running. And let me just. What do I have to do?
I think you also has to start as information. You have to start.
Okay, well, we'll see it in a second. I'm just starting the other one again. dev.O/failure.cfm. And you need to know I have an older version of this of Lucee running here. I actually don't know why it doesn't show up the other one. But what you will see, here is failure, right? So that is running here. I guess you don't see the current one because it's already over, right? So that might just be the rest of it just showing up there. But here you see that it is failure here. That is what I called. Then let me just see what else do I have. I have the start time. I have the tag context. Where am I at the moment? Where is my code right now? Right? And here you see in line 5. And what else do I have? Let's see. Tag context, additional tag context. Well, you have thread information, you have debugging information. I have turned off debugging, but you can see debugging information, you can see cookie, everything. And what you can then do is see if admin type surveillance or action surveillance, and then you just stop. You can stop a thread by just passing in the ID, right? Okay. If you need more information, let me know, and I'll yeah. Yes. So you actually don't need Fusion Reactor for that. This is working out of the box, right? And of course, Fusion Reactor does tons and tons of things more, way better than this, but still, this is great. Okay. CFadmin action reload. If you change stuff in the XML, you can just reload it like that. Okay, let's see what else do we have. Using cfdump, you can just use format simple in order to get rid of all the JavaScript that is included in there. You just have the simple output. Then you have show UDFs equals false so that you don't have all these methods in there in those dumps. And what you have as well is here on the bottom, you can do something like a default attribute, cftag, this.tag.cfdump format equals simple. Then all your dumps will automatically have that simple format in the application CFC. Or what you can do as well is output equals debug. Then it will not output anything on your site, but it will show the information in the debugging output. Right? So that is really a very, very simple example. Let me just get here, and I'll just do something like dump var equals, or that's is it equals, yeah, CGI, comma output equals debug, and of course I need to turn on debugging. Let me just do that quickly. Turn on debugging, yes, with all of those, and once that's done, that's why you have dump in here. Click. Good. I'm done in a second. Good. And now, what was that? That was failure. Did I save it? Okay. Devo. Is it still waiting for the other thing to complete? Yeah. Well, anyway, you can imagine. It's actually then in the dump in the output.
I've got a tip for you.
Yeah.
When you're dumping loads of stuff on a page, what do? You have like dump something, dump something, dump something. Just put square brackets around it and you can have a list of them because it's an implicit array.
Oh yeah, you dump the entire thing in one dump on. Every all the things you
do as
an array of all of them. Yeah.
You tweeted about this just recently.
It's a great example.
Yeah, it's cool. Yeah, it's really good. I love lazy queries. Lazy queries are actually allowing you to go to the database and only open up a cursor to the database. And whenever you need the data, it will fetch the data. Right? And almost in general, lazy queries are about 30% faster than regular queries. Right? They have two downsides. The first downside is that, no, there's only one downside. You can't store the queries in the application CFN or the application scope, because it keeps a connection open to the database. And if this connection is terminated by the timeout or by whatever, you won't have that query there anymore. But what it does as well, so if you do something like CF query, or lazy equals true, select top 10, whatever from the database, it will give you a record count of 10, even though it didn't fetch any of the data. Right? And normally, lazy queries are always faster. So we were thinking a lot whether we are just not making the default. And as soon as it is set into the application scope, it will actually convert that into a real query. Right? But that is kind of, we're undecided there yet, because we haven't really deeply tested it. We have clients. We have a client where I work very often, is he's using lazy queries all the time. And we didn't have any issues yet, but still, that's kind of a hidden feature. Okay, so you can use, if you have a function, you can use an additional argument telling this function to execute in parallel, right? Since these operations take a little longer to fire up a thread, you should only do that in functions that are, and in each functions that are actually taking a little longer. So that if you have, you remember I showed you that before. You have an each for the array, for instance, and then you say true, yes, execute in parallel, and then comma 10, which is the number of threads that you're using at the same time, right? And just make that only for functions or these closures in there that are actually taking more than 5 milliseconds. Because just to open up a thread, it takes already 2, 3, 4 milliseconds, right? Okay. Good. And this is a nice trick. You can just take the class file and replace the CFM file with the class file, and it will still execute the code. Right? So if you want to kind of obfuscate your code, you just take the bytecode file, replace the original CFM file with that bytecode file, call it index CFM, and your code will still run. Yeah. Nice little trick. Good. Yeah, well, CF thread type task is a very nice thing. Yeah, dynamic function calls, so you can do things like this here. Sum function of 3, and the sum function returns an array, and you can just immediately always address the third one.
You address the return.
Yeah.
As it is, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, the cat defaults, as I said before, you can set defaults. How many of you are using CF location? Quite a few?
Yeah.
Which attribute do you always put in?
Response code.
Response code or
Add
add token equals false. If you forget it, you get this bullshit thing in the order.
Yeah.
So what you do is you do in the application CFC, you write CF set this dot tab dot location dot add token equals false. That is the default setting then for this attribute throughout your request. That's really a neat feature because then you can just define basic behavior in a different way. Okay? Yeah, well, that takes around 10 minutes alone to display all of these things. So anyway, thank you very much. Kept your time anyway. I kept you here already way too long. Have a good meal.
So lunch is on you.
Lunch is on me. Hey, drinks were on me yesterday. Thanks, guys.